I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what does Jim think of the new Odyssey film? Okay, maybe not. In fact, nobody's asked me what I think of the Odyssey film. Then again, everybody's got the right to a take. So I will wade into the wine dark sea and set my little review boat afloat. Let's hope it stays afloat. I'll try to be mercifully brief. There's been a lot of noise about this film, the Christopher Nolan directed Odyssey. And most of that is not worth your time. I don't have all that much to say that hasn't already been said. So let me just cut to the chase. I saw the film last Friday afternoon. It was very entertaining. I liked it. If you like big summer blockbusters, this one has breakout power. It's thunderously loud. The loudest film I've ever seen in a theater. The sonics are worthy of the gods Poseidon and Zeus. You have the roar of the seas, the sound of the skies cracking open, the clang of battle. It's all amped up to 11. Nigel from Spinal Tap would be proud. And at times, the seats on the floor were actually shaking. So brace yourself for that. And the fact that it's so loud and there's so much going on the soundtrack underneath, that does make picking up the dialogue a little bit of a challenge. We were, my wife and my friend, we were commenting on that afterwards. I was wishing I had closed captioning to help me with some of the speeches. But if I watched, I'm sure I'll watch the film eventually on TV someday, and I would definitely turn on and close captioning. But don't kid yourself. This is an absolutely supersized Hollywood production. It's epic in scale, yet it has a certain gritty realism that makes you feel like you're immersed in this mythological ancient world where nothing is certain. The gods are real, but you can't always see them. Fate is not always in your hands. And it's just, you never know what's going to be around the corner. Like you might encounter a monster on the next shore that you hit. If you like your films writ large with broad brushstrokes, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Now, much discussion has been swirling around Christopher Nolan's casting choices and adaptation of Homer's text. The casting is fine, in my opinion. Now, maybe if you're a racist, you'll have some trouble with the casting choices, but come on, this is just typical Hollywood casting practice these days. It has big stars, it has a diverse cast. The acting is decent. There wasn't one role that felt absurdly askew to me at all, so I'm just going to move on from that. It's just a silly topic. Most interesting is the question of adaptation, and I would say this, that every film based on a book is an adaptation. It's a translation. It's a selective interpretation of the source material. That's just the way it is, and it's always going to be that way. Christopher Nolan is no different in this regard. I will say that broadly, he sticks to the storyline of the Odyssey. It's close enough for me to be okay with it. Were there scenes that I wish he would have kept in and not cut out? Of course. Let me go through some of those. I missed the episodes with Nausicaa, Alcinous, Arete, and the Phaeacians. They offer this wonderful counterpoint to the bad hospitality shown in many other episodes in the Odyssey. They also, if you read the book, it sets up the frame for Odysseus's retelling of his adventures. Everything's kind of nested there, but that is not in the film at all. I also missed the scene with the lotus eaters, although the lotus flower does play a role. It's kind of assigned to Calypso, who sort of feeds lotus flowers to Odysseus, and I won't go into all the details, but he made a change there. I really missed the marriage bed scene at the end, where after Odysseus slays the suitors, he um, he's ready to reacquaint himself with Penelope, his wife, and she tests him. She cleverly says, "Oh, move the marriage bed," and he says, "What the hell are you talking about? I built that bed, and I built it around this oak tree post, and blah blah." And then she knows it's really her husband. Well, that's just gone from the film. So if you're waiting for it, you're going to be disappointed. Why there was no Achilles in the underworld, I'm not sure. I actually liked the addition of Sinon, the kind of little kid that's with the Trojan horse. That's a story that's actually hauled in from the Aeneid. I was okay with that little change. It was kind of an interesting little subplot. But yeah, no Achilles. I missed him. The end of the film also felt rushed to me and unnecessary. I won't give that away, but it just seemed to me like it could have been handled more smoothly. So despite those qualms, and there were a few, I found that most of the conflations, the cuts, the additions, they made dramatic sense given the kind of film that Christopher Nolan wanted to make. Always remember, he's working not only with an adaptation of Homer's plot lines, and he's basing it off of translations, but he's working within the genre conventions of the Hollywood blockbuster. He has to honor that convention, else he wouldn't have had like a $250 million budget or whatever it was. He's got certain themes also that he wants to tease out. I'll mention Hannah, and Hannah Books had a great point in her review where she mentioned she sort of saw some Christian morality themes creeping in there. And I definitely think that was in there. That's not in the Odyssey, but that's his interpretation. And I sort of respect that every director is entitled to have their interpretation on it. Like, doesn't mean you have to like it, but it's an adaptation. It's always going to be an adaptation. So what we get is a big, broad canvas with epic grandeur, spectacular scenes. I love the fact that they hardly used any CGI. Love that. It felt like an old-fashioned film in that regard. You really feel like you're on that voyage with the men wandering among strange shores, never quite sure what you're going to encounter. Lots of magic and adventure. It's magical filmmaking in a lot of ways, and I think Christopher Nolan deserves some credit for that. It does come at the expense of character complexity, however, and this again gets back to the fact that he's working within the blockbuster genre. Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, he has some complexity in this film, I would say, but it's not as much as you find in Homer. The same goes for Penelope, for Circe, for Calypso, for Athena, for so many of the characters, almost all of them. And it made me think of the E.M. Forster book, Aspects of the Novel, where he analyzes character types. And he says, there's basically like round characters and flat characters. Round characters are rich, deep, complex, they're well-rounded, they're ambiguous, there's a lot for you to interpret there. Flat characters are more thin, they're stereotyped, they're caricatured, often for comic effect. And there's less to say about them. There's a place for both kinds of characters in fiction and drama, but we really, really like the round characters, at least I do. I would say that Nolan's Odyssey gives us characters with a little bit of roundness and depth, but they're much flatter than you'll find in Homer's book. His characterizations are better. Should we be surprised? I'm not a connoisseur of blockbusters because I hardly ever get out to see movies anymore, but my impression was that the characters you get in Nolan's Odyssey are much rounder than you would normally get in this kind of fair. So I will conclude. I'll say that the film matched my expectations. I went in expecting a blockbuster, and that's what I got. It delivered the goods. It hit the marks it was shooting for. It was satisfying. It was thrilling. It had some emotional high points. There were some tearjerker moments. The theme of the homecoming, the theme of hospitality, this was all well drawn. And it was just fun. It was a fun experience. I got my money's worth. Is Christopher Nolan's Odyssey film a sufficient substitute for actually reading Homer? Come on. Of course not. No way. Duh. Duh. Really? Seriously? No. But maybe this film will draw some people in and make them want to read the real deal in translation. And that, to me, is a win. Even if a minuscule amount of the viewing audience, like 1%, 0.5%, are drawn to Homer and they read Homer for themselves in translation, they're going to have a great experience and they're going to find a great book convert, very possibly. I think that's a positive thing. Also, for once, I felt like pop culture discourse met me halfway. Most of the time I try to ignore what's going on in pop culture. The latest summer blockbuster, it just washes off me. I let it roll off me. I take no interest in it. There's so much drivel and slop out there. I'm not a big fan of Hollywood filmmaking. For the most part, people take it way too seriously. They try to make it seem more artistic than it really is. It's the entertainment business. It's not necessarily. You're lucky if it rises to the level of art. And I'm not even sure if this Odyssey rises quite to that level. Someone could make a case for it, but it was surely entertaining. It was definitely that. But to meet me halfway and to be talking about great literature, and so many people are discussing this online and making videos and having discussions with friends about it. It just proves that Homer, he continues to be relevant for the 21st century. I'm not surprised by that at all, but it's a good thing. And Christopher Nolan has helped to bring Homer into the great conversation, to keep that conversation going along. And for that, I'm thankful. It keeps the flame alive. So that's what I thought of the film. I liked it. I can't say for sure whether you would like it because I don't know you, but I would recommend that you look at some reviews, talk with friends who've seen it, see what they think. Watch some booktubers who are reviewing it, people that you trust, and we're all going to have different takes, but you'll get a sense of whether it's for you or not, or whether you can maybe wait till later to watch it. I thought it's really nice to see it on the big screen. I did not see it in IMAX format, but I was very satisfied with the format that I saw in the theater. It was really nice. Anyway, if you did see the Odyssey, what did you think? Do you have a review? This is a space where you can weigh in and give your comments. As always, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, I hope you'll become a subscriber. You can do the like, subscribe, thumbs up, ring bells, dance around, do your jig, whatever. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.